You're listening
to the CD Baby DIY
Musician
Podcast.
Hey there, and welcome to another episode of the CD Baby DIY Musician Podcast. My name is Kevin Bruner, your host for the show. And this week, our show comes straight from our listener feedback. A listener by the name of Steve emailed me saying, Kevin, I was thinking this morning as my son and I were driving to school that you should interview our friend Josh Rosenthal. This guy is absolutely doing it. He's a completely independent folk singer-songwriter in his late 20s, just graduated from University of Utah in public relations. He takes the idea of 1,000 dedicated fans and goes a step further. Steve goes on to say that Josh has been a big inspiration as he has watched him focus on a few specific markets and really build a dedicated following in those markets. So, Steve, I appreciate your email, and thanks to you, all of our listeners will be able to hear Josh's story. So here is my interview with Josh Rosenthal. All right, well, joining me on the phone is Josh Rosenthal. Josh, how you doing?
Doing well, thank you.
Well, Josh, you are, I think, the first person who's been a guest on the podcast that came because a fan of the podcast emailed me and said, you have to have this guy on the show. He's doing some amazing stuff. And so I immediately emailed you, and here you are.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So obviously you're getting the attention of some press. I've seen you've had quite a bit of press in your area of Salt Lake City and just the greater Utah area. Why don't you start out by giving us a little background of your music and who you are as an artist?
Yeah, well, I'm kind of the genre that I've fallen under, which it took me a long time to even be willing to classify myself, because, you know, artists, we think we're all so original, but not so much so. I would say I'm Americana combined with folk. So I've been doing this here in Salt Lake. I moved to Salt Lake about 8 years ago, originally from West Texas, which is a great breeding ground for singer-songwriter types. So I came to Salt Lake. I travel. I play about 100 dates a year right now. Probably 20 of them would be in Utah, and the rest of them abroad, I guess you could say. So I've released 4 albums this year, and have a pretty decent following in about 6 markets, I would say, and aspire to get up to a strong following in 10 markets where I could draw 1,000 people to a concert in 10 different markets, and that's kind of my goal in the next 3 to 4 years.
Okay. Well, there's a couple things there I want to get a little more detail on, but for starters, you went to college in Utah, correct?
Yeah, University of Utah.
So most musicians, I think, and just music fans in general, when they think about cities that might have a thriving music scene, I would assume that Salt Lake's probably pretty far down the list.
Yeah, or near the bottom.
So what's made you decide to stay there and pursue music in that area?
There's a few reasons. One is that I feel like all the big music markets take all the best artists, and with the way things work today, I think if one artist can dominate their own market, they don't even necessarily have to be great by the nation's standard of a good singer-songwriter, but if they can dominate their market, they have a career and they can do music full-time if they can own their market. And so for me, I could have gone to Nashville, could have gone to LA, could have gone to New York and gave it my best shot, or I could have stayed in Salt Lake where there's no one or few who are doing what I'm doing. And so that means competition is less. It's kind of an uphill battle to get people out to shows at first, but once they're on board, they're really on board. And then I'm one of 2 or 3 other artists in Salt Lake that people love to come out and see. So it really allowed for me to kind of take over and really pursue this market.
So you feel like you maybe skipped a few steps just because it was easier there's not as much noise for people's attention.
now that people are excited about, people are excited about touring bands, but Salt Lake doesn't get a whole lot of touring bands unless there's people coming from Seattle and headed to Denver, and they're just looking for a night to make money. And so, I mean, there's some great shows here, but for my genre of a singer-songwriter folk type artist, there's not a whole lot happening around here. And so, yeah, it took a while to conjure up the excitement for it, but I feel like now I've got a pretty good thing moving up here to where it makes it worth it and keeps me going.
Do you feel like the trade-off might have been that you had to do a little bit more work as far as like raising awareness for the scene there in town? Do you have some pretty high caliber venues, music venues there?
No, I interestingly, I choose to stay away from big name venues because there's not as much money in it. I can't make as much money if I play the cool venues here in town, which there's some really great ones, some that I love to go see shows at, but as an artist, I can't afford to play them. Whereas if I could find a room that will let me charge $10 to $15 a head in just a warehouse room or in a church or something like that, then I could keep all the money. So there's 100 people that have come to the shows. I charged $15, and so I've got $1,500 from one night, and I can pay the bills for a month. And so that's kind of my approach in that. But I don't know, is that really what you were asking?
Yeah. To me, that makes a lot of sense because some of the small towns, I think. I hear from artists all across, especially in the Midwest, some in between LA and Nashville, all those towns. There's a lot of big cities like Salt Lake that aren't known for their music scene. But, artists sometimes feel like it's a challenge if they don't have these great venues in their town to really start making money playing music. Yeah.
And I'd say the downside to it is it's hard to feel legitimate. I mean, when Nashville or LA gets all the attention, and here I am in Salt Lake, and I'm making enough money to do this full time. But sometimes the struggle is, the grass is greener. If I lived there, maybe it would be better. When in all reality, I can't say that with any sense of surety whatsoever because things are going really well here for me, and in my surrounding big city markets like Boise, Denver, and then some of the smaller ones like Twin Falls and Idaho Falls.
Well, you mentioned a couple things already about some of your goals and ideas, and you mentioned building like an audience, a dedicated audience of 1,000 people in various markets. And I'm assuming that you already have that plan underway and have seen some success in that area.
Yeah, I would. Let me pull out the notes here. There we go. So if I were to say the cities that I'm going after. Like I said earlier, lived in Lubbock, Texas, and so I still consider Lubbock a hometown crowd when I go back and play there. But all the places that surround me are places that I feel like I could do something meaningful right now. It'd be Lubbock, Salt Lake, Denver, Boise, Twin Falls, Idaho Falls, Dallas-Fort Worth, Austin, and then Ogden, Utah, and then Grand Junction, Colorado. And so with each of those, I mean, some of those are smaller towns by comparison. And so I would like to have 1,000 people, but also some of the towns that are bigger, like Boise, I could maybe get to the point where I'm at 500 to 1,000 people at a show. Same thing with Denver. But then on my way to those places, there's some great towns that I could draw 200 to 250 and make a decent amount of money in those nights to keep me going and to stretch out. I mean, just for my love for being on the road, and to stretch out the shows longer or the time gone longer and playing cool shows that I want to play.
So have you already built a couple of towns up with like 1,000 people following? Like, do you get 1,000 people out to a show in Salt Lake or any of the towns around there?
Salt Lake, it's on the horizon to get to that point. I feel confident that depending on how it's marketed or who would promote it, if it was me or someone else, the perfect storm of promotion, that I could get about 700 people, 500 to 700 people here. So I'm not there in any of those, but that's my goal, is to get to that point in the next 3 to 4 years.
Yeah. Well, it's good to have goals and something to aim for. So how are you going about developing these fan bases in these markets that you've kind of laid out?
Well, I got my degree in public relations from the University of Utah, and I went back to school just just to get a degree to have something to fall back on. But I really found this to be extremely useful. And so we spent my last semester of school before I graduated strategizing on how to go about doing this and how to get into new markets and how to get people's attention. Because public relations is all about is advertising basically without a budget, and which is perfect for artists because we don't have much of a budget for advertising, or we don't always understand how beneficial advertising can be. So for me, we were just looking for ideas with professors. We were just strategizing on how can I get someone's attention without spending money, too much money, and so I went the route of releasing 4 albums in 4 months. And yeah, there's a little bit more money in that. Not a whole lot more money. I just spread out through each album has 5 to 6 songs on it, and each one and all of them kind of support the same idea. That has gotten people's attention pretty well, because every artist will release 1 album. Sometimes it'll be a double disc, but I had never heard of anyone doing 4 albums in 4 months with all new material, a couple covers, but by and large, 22 new songs for fans, something to look forward to each month. And so that's helped the word spread pretty well. In each of the markets that I'm going after, I have a person or two that I would consider who's really on board and really spreading the word and getting people out to shows or directing people to iTunes to make the sales. So this semester, that's been my primary push, has been getting the word out about the 4 albums in 4 months.
And when you say you're releasing 4 albums, are you just releasing them digitally, or are they completely manufactured CDs?
Yeah, 3 of the 4 are manufactured hard discs. Then the first one was called Overture, and that was more than anything just an excuse to get a 4th album out there. It was kind of, just an overture. It was a view of what was to come in other albums. It was still different versions of songs, or stylistically, it was what was to come. There was some full band stuff. There was me by myself. There was some a cappella stuff with me and some other vocalists, and it was just kind of a glimpse of everything. So that was digital only. And then the other ones are all hard discs, and each one has had kind of its own unique release. And because it's been so much work, each one has gotten a little less attention than the previous one. Unfortunately, just the nature of doing it on my own. But yeah, so I have a full band one in there, and I did the 2 of them in Nashville, the full band one and the live acoustic one. And then I did the first one, Overture, and the final one, which is called For a Day, I did in my studio in my house.
Do you feel like the time and money and expense got the result that you were looking for?
So far, so good. I had to find investors to make this happen. I had to put together a business plan. I put together a 19-page business plan and sat down. Found the nicest clothes I could find, which, as an artist, they're not that great, but I got my best clothes on and presented to people who I knew believed in my music, and they had money to put behind it if they could see my plan to reclaim the money for them plus interest.
Yeah.
So that was kind of how I got all that. And so my plan to reclaim exists over like an 18-month period, and we're kind of 2 to 3 months into that right now, and I'm almost halfway. I've almost got half the money that I need to pay back all the investors, so I'm pretty stoked about that.
Oh, that's good. Good to hear that's going well.
Yeah. Because it's, it's like 5% amazing and 95% sheer terror.
Yeah.
Making money.
Yeah. You obviously spent a lot of time putting together a plan. Do you feel like that eased some of the tension of paying them back, knowing that, I've laid out this plan. It's now I just need to, do these steps that I've already laid out. Yeah. It has made it easier, and it made them really excited because, the stereotype of an artist is that we're extremely right-brained and incapable of doing things like that. And so, it's a huge challenge for me to go through and do all that administrative stuff to get to that point. And my wife is super supportive and super helpful and helped me get through it. So to go into this whole thing with this big plan made everybody feel better about it. Yeah.
People who were investing money, my wife, myself, that we had a plan and that we wouldn't stop until this money was reclaimed because we insure. So some of the guys who knew more about money than me told me that I have to tell these people how am I insuring their money, and I'm personally insured the money for them, that if something happens and I lose both my hands or my voice stops working, then this is coming out of my whatever job I can find after that. So I will repay this money.
Yeah.
So thankfully, I have both my hands and my voice still, so I can do it.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is one of those things where, you were able to make the albums, but the responsibility level goes way up.
Yeah. Yeah.
You mentioned that you have some people basically on the ground in each of these little markets that you're focusing on. How did you start that relationship and locate them, and what exactly are they doing for you?
Well, it's kind of convoluted on some of them, super random. I played a concert here in Salt Lake in which someone invited me to come play in Idaho Falls for a festival, and there was someone who was at that lived in Dallas. And so her name is Stephanie, and in Dallas she has done more than I can't thank her enough for everything she's done. She booked like 3 or 4 shows that paid pretty well in Dallas. Just a few weeks ago, those finally happened. So I've got people like that who have just come across my music and loved it and identified with it and come in alongside the meaning behind it all and wanted to help me get that out. And then I've also good thing about growing up in Lubbock, Texas, is that a lot of people tried to get out of Lubbock. And so I had a lot of friends who have just dispersed all over the country. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of how a lot of the markets have started. That's how Denver really came about, is old friends. That's how Austin is starting to emerge. That I'm breaking into Austin just by using this house show model of playing as many house shows as I can, hosted by old friends from Lubbock. So each one of them has kind of been, I've come across them differently, but all of them are on board with what I'm doing to the point where I feel confident to ask them for help in finding places to play or hosting a house show and charging $5 a head or various things like that.
Were your friends just fans already, or was it something that you just kind of eased into it? And the reason I ask is because I could see a lot of artists like hearing that, he's just getting his friends to help and, spamming all their friends on Facebook saying, right, I need help, and feeling like that didn't work.
Yeah, a big part of my model is just how I live life in general is relational and friendship-based. And so mass emails or just posting things on Twitter or Facebook have never worked well for me. And the reason that personally asking friends has worked well for me is because I think, and this is one of the things I had written down here that I wanted to make sure and communicate, was that if you're taking advantage of someone just to get a show in that market, then they will sniff that out, I believe, because I've done that, and it's not a good idea, but they will sniff that out and understand that they're being taken advantage of. But if you truly approach it like your music is going to be something that's going to be a gift to them by coming there and playing, and that they really are on board with that, and that they're not being taken advantage of, but they're more a part of the movement and more a part of the bigger picture, then it's easy to get them on board. But the most important thing is I'm not taking advantage of them, and I'm not leveraging a friendship or creating a friendship where there's not truly one just so I can get what I want.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a key point with the internet and the way that we have a lot easier access to get to people that might be considered gatekeepers or just might have something useful to offer us, that we just kind of try to take advantage of that relationship and just say, give me what I want, and then move on and leave them feeling used. Well, in your email to me, you mentioned that at one time you really pushed the media connection, having the public relations background, but that didn't really return the effort that you thought it might.
For me, what I'm learning about media and really putting a lot of effort into getting media coverage is that was more about me than truly reaching a fan or establishing a new fan. It was more cool to see my face in a newspaper or to get a feature story written about myself, but I didn't see any growth from that. I've never had anybody tell me that that's where they first heard about me, is through something like that. And so I chased it thinking that that'd be the cool thing to do, and that's what would help me gain legitimacy to get an article on Wikipedia and, all these things that are really just useless when it comes to the bottom line of getting new fans and making enough money to get through the year. I finally started to kind of, I don't want to say totally give up, but not invest hardly anything into my worth as an artist as to whether or not the media covers me and what I'm doing, because I just don't think that that's necessarily getting me new fans.
When you were talking about having dedicated fans that are really on board with what you're doing, what are you doing on a daily or weekly basis in order to maintain that relationship with your fans?
I would say though, because I've been on the road for the last month and a half, hasn't been as much, but there's been kind of the general things that I do, like blogging, Twitter. I mean, I respond to every email and every post I get on Facebook. I do just a lot of little things like that always are good for reputation of people knowing that if they have a question for me, if they want to interact with me, that I'm available for that. I mean, beyond that, I'm very firm on not sending out emails to my email list or to my Facebook group any more than once every 6 weeks, because I think that gets annoying. So in some ways, I think the best thing that I can do is lay off a little bit at times until I have something to say. I don't want to just send out an email because it's time to send out an email. If I don't have anything to say, I'm not going to say anything. So then I develop that trust with them that if they've got something from me, that it's going to be, that there's something happening or worth hearing about. But just kind of all those small things then combined with strategically saying the things that need to be said, but not too much at once, and then spread out over a long period of time.
Well, I wanted to hit on some of the promotion ideas that you were executing with your music promotion, and I saw that you were giving away 300 tracks through iTunes. How does that work? I've never heard of anyone giving away tracks through iTunes, especially an indie artist, and I work at CD Baby, and we distribute to iTunes, so I was kind of like, how's he doing this?
Well, it's funny. I don't remember what I was watching, some VH1 or something on Aerosmith years and years ago, and one of the guys was talking about fake it till you make it, that you just kind of have this appearance of a big artist or whatever until eventually maybe you really become that. But I just saw a lot of artists do that, or you see, at Starbucks you can get those download cards, all of that. Well, what you can do, and it even has a nicer personal touch. What I did was I said, so I'm giving away 300 tracks, and then I directed them to my blog so they can figure out how to get it. And when they went to my blog, it was, all you have to do is email me at this address, tell me, and I gave them my email address. So email me, give me your own address, and then give me the address of your friend that has never heard my music before. And so I needed the email address of both. And then you go into iTunes, and I went under my own account. And then, so if anyone has an album on there, then you look on there. If you look on there, on the latest version of iTunes, it'll say like 99 cents or $1.29 to buy the song. If you click on the thing next to it, it says gift this song. So I went through and did 300 songs or 300 gifts. Each one was individual and personal. So it took me a day to do it all, but so I'd have to put my name, their email address, and then I would just, and I had a kind of a canned email that I sent to each of them, but and if I knew them or knew of them, interact with them, I'd add a little personal touch to it. But so I just went through and did them one by one, so they all got gifts, and it had a pretty good response. I mean, as far as getting more downloads or people hearing the music for the first time and liking it. So I would say that was a pretty good success for me.
Yeah, so you basically had to buy the gift for them.
Right. So, but I spend $1 on each song. But if, after tax, I spend $1.06 on each song. But I get 63 cents back per song. Yeah. So in all reality, my cost for each one was whatever that is, 27, 30 cents a song is what I was spending to do that. And then so 300 songs, whatever that ends up being, that was my bottom line cost after I, get all that money back. Yeah. So I had to go into a little bit, put it on a credit card, but it's just kind of for me a marketing expense, and definitely something I'll do again. assuming I have the man hours to do it, or maybe I could, get a college student to help out and pay them hourly.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was a cool idea because it did use iTunes, and so many people are just so familiar with iTunes, and it just makes it easy for them, for a lot of folks. But that's a cool trick. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, good.
But you do get the money back, a good portion of it. So yeah. It was a cool idea. So people were definitely emailing their friends, telling them to check it out, and
yeah. I got a good amount of retweets that day, because that was also part of the incentive, or just kind of a bonus, like pass this on to your friends. So a lot of people retweeted it that day, in which I kind of can monitor that through TweetDeck or various other Twitter things. So I got a lot of that, and I just got a ton of emails, and so it was definitely a really good response to that.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned the social networks, and you told me that you spend more energy on your Facebook group than your Facebook page, and you felt like the Facebook group was more valuable. Why don't you explain how you're using the Facebook group and why you think it's been valuable?
I kind of pursued the page, or I was looking around the page a lot, because I feel like the page is the thing that makes you come off as more legitimate, because they're actually called fans on a page.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, if you go look up my name on Facebook, it'll say Josh Rosenthal has something like 160 fans, which isn't that great. But with the group, I've got something like 1,400 or something like that. People, and the reason I went with the group, or I've invested more in the group, is that there's a higher level of communication that you can have. So I can send full emails, and that was really what did it for me. I treat it like an email list, whereas a Facebook page, and I could be wrong, I could be limited and just not fully understand it, but I think all you can do is those updates.
Yeah, that's correct.
And you don't get, so I'm a fan of a few things on Facebook, and it's funny, when someone updates as a fan, when I get that update, I don't know. There's nothing that alerts me that Josh Wilson has sent out an update, unless I go into my inbox and I see, on the left side there's updates, and so there's 6 updates, and I had no idea, and they're all completely outdated.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if I send out a message through the inbox, if people still choose to get alerts in their email about when they get new emails, it'll come up, it'll let them know. And I just think in general people check their messages more, or their inbox more, than they check their updates of the things that they're a fan of. Because some people are fans of like 300 and 400 things. Mm-hmm. So it's just easy to get lost in all of that, whereas the group, I think, just there's more potential to stand out.
Yeah. Do you use it as a forum as well, or do you have conversations going on the group? Because I know the groups can act like more of a forum type place on the web.
They can, and I've tried to cultivate that, but I'm just learning that more. My demographic isn't terribly interested in that, and having a whole lot of online interaction, period. But they are on Facebook, and they are fans, and they do want to get updates. That way, and with my demographic being 30-somethings to early 40-somethings, and some late 20s, but primarily in there, they're on Facebook, but they're not as interactive as the early 20-somethings, unless they're kind of plugged in or more hip than the average person their age.
Yeah. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you are trying to attach your music to something more meaningful that I know that you've said it's a movement with a purpose, and people get on board because they attach themselves to its perceived meaning.
Yeah. Well, these 4 albums in 4 months have all been about just kind of our American culture and how we love the myth of the cowboy and how he rides off into the sunset, and we're nobler to do things on our own, and we're better off like that. And the point of these 4 albums, in a lot of ways, is to reject that idea. And so I thought, how else can I communicate that? If that's my message, so for me, in my approach, the end is not the music. The music is the means of the message. And so I'm in the process now of, if that really is true, then how else can I effectively communicate my message with what my abilities are? And so I'm in the process of writing a book that will go along with it. So these 4 albums are called the Villages Suite. And so then I'm going to release a book in the first 6 months of next year, maybe the first 8 months, that coincides with it, explains the songs, explains the concept, and is just kind of another way of communicating my message. But I think just as artists that we don't always have to totally limit ourselves to just music if we have capabilities outside of that. But we got to tie ourselves to a message. We got to tie ourselves to something that we think is meaningful, because that's what people want. I mean, even talking about listening to that podcast by Tom Jackson and talking about concerts, that concerts are comprised of moments, and people don't come to just hear songs. People come to experience moments. And I think that's what makes people want to spread the word about your music, is if they have experienced something moment-like with it, whether it be in the message or whether it be in the presentation, that makes them want to tell their friends about it. So there's got to be a message. If you're just playing songs, if you're just getting on stage and playing a bunch of different songs for people, I don't know if that's really going to start a movement around your music.
That's some good perspectives there. I know you have some ideas about presenting yourself as a brand, how you make decisions for your music. What are your thoughts on that?
I would encourage any artist to do it. I think it's helped me a lot. Basically pick 3 adjectives that you want people to think about when they think about your music. So when they think about me, I want them to think about 3 things, and they don't have to use these exact words, but I want them to walk away feeling this about my music. So there's simple, distilled, and old soul. That I want my stuff to be simple in that I want it to be understandable. I don't use big words. I talk like a normal person. My songs aren't comprised of these heavy metaphors that you can only get if I explain it, but they're a bit more overt, and that my stuff is distilled, and that it's boiled down to the rawest components of what my message is, and so there's not a whole lot of wondering. And then also old soul, that it comes off like I'm wise, or that I know what I'm talking about, or that I've experienced, or just that I'm a good listener when it comes to people who have experienced tough things in their life. And so all my decisions, even down to the colors that I use to represent myself in promotion and my album covers and all that, surround those 3 adjectives. That it's got to be simple, distilled, and old soul.
Do you feel that that's helped give you a better focus as an artist?
Yeah, I feel like it's really allowed me to at least look like more singular in purpose, that I've got my stuff together. Because when I look at label artists, I mean, they all appear to be, I guess the more established ones all appear to be communicating something, the same message throughout every aspect of what represents them, from their art to their photography to the music they're making. All of that. And so I feel like, for me, taking these 3 adjectives brings that home. Yeah,
I think that sounds like a smart idea, and that you're probably right. Most of the independent artists, and I'm sure I've been guilty of it as well. You're kind of just taking stabs at things and just trying to tackle it as it comes, and not really put a lot of global thought into the overall idea of what you're presenting, which
right.
I know that in the past we've talked about it some, I think all the way back to episode 2 with Lisa Lapine, who she's big into artist branding, and we've hit on some of those topics. Did you have any other final thoughts, words of advice for artists listening to our show before we go?
Yeah, I'd say the best piece of advice that I ever got was from a guy named Dale, who later became a good friend of mine, but at the time we weren't. And I was sitting in a coffee shop talking with this guy, saying, what in the world am I doing with my life? Why am I doing music? And this guy looks over to me and says, so have you made your decision that you're going to do music with your life? And I said, yeah. And he said, do you feel confident in that decision? And I said, yes. And he said, then only surround yourself with other people who support you. Because if this is what you're definitely going to be doing, you don't need people who are going to be speaking against you or telling you that you can't do it. Only surround yourself with people who think that and believe in you because this is what you're doing no matter what, then that's who you need around you. So that's been something that's followed me for a while now, and I definitely think that's good advice.
Yeah, that is good advice because, artists, I think that's one of probably the biggest issue we face personally is that, from the beginning, it even happened, when I went off to college to study music, I had a relative say, why do you want to waste your life? So you get a lot of pushback like that where it's like, it's a struggle to begin with to take on a creative field and want to do something creatively just because there's so many variables in doing something like that. And so it is important to surround yourself with people that see the vision and want you to be doing what's, using your talents and gifts and things. So that's good advice. So, well, thanks for being on the show, Josh, and keep us up to date with how your plan goes to spread throughout those markets, and we'd love to hear more about it.
Perfect.
You don't have to hide it, baby. Say what's on your mind. I don't care how bad it makes me cry. Baby, just don't tell me no more lies.
That brings us to the end of another episode. Thanks again to Steve for sending in the interview suggestion, and thanks to Josh for coming on the show. I'll put a link to Josh's website in the show notes if you'd like to find out more about what he's up to. If you'd like to send us a comment or interview suggestion, you can do so by emailing us at info@cdbabypodcast.com. Also, if you'd like to call our listener line and leave a comment, we love playing those on the roundtable edition of the podcast. You can call us at 206-426-5683. There's also the comment section at the podcast website, which is cdbabypodcast.com. So there are 3 ways you can weigh in and contribute to the podcast. It's a whole lot more fun when there's interaction, so I encourage you to interact. Well, that's all for now. We'll catch you next time.
Baby, say what's on your mind. I don't care how bad it makes me cry. Baby, just don't tell me no more lies. Oh, baby, no just look me in the eyes.
Just say what's on your mind.
Just look me in the eyes. You don't have to hide it, baby. Say what's on your mind. I don't care how bad it makes me cry. And I don't need to know the reasons why. Baby, just don't tell me no more lies.
You've been listening to the CD Baby DIY Musician Podcast, broadcasting from Portland, Oregon, USA.